Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance watching the stars drift past in the endless black of space. His weathered hands gripped the command rail as he studied the tactical display showing their patrol route along the outer rim territories. The Third Fleet had been out here for 6 months now, keeping watch over the peaceful colonies that dotted this quiet sector of space. Captain Lisa Torres approached him with a datapad in her hands and concern written across her face. She had been his tactical advisor for 3 years now, and Kane trusted her judgment more than anyone else in the fleet. When Torres looked worried, it usually meant trouble was coming their way. "Admiral, we are picking up something strange on the long-range sensors," Torres said as she handed him the pad. "It looks like a distress signal, but the transmission is badly damaged, and we can only make out fragments of the message." Kane took the pad and studied the readout. The signal was definitely alien in origin and appeared to be coming from the direction of Haven Prime, which was one of the larger Villani colonies in this sector. The Villani were peaceful bird-like creatures who had never caused trouble for anyone, and spent most of their time studying art and philosophy. "How long since?" The signal started transmitting, Kane asked as he continued reading the technical analysis. "About 12 hours, sir, but we only just picked it up because of how weak it is," Torres replied. "The computer has been trying to clean up the audio, but most of it is just static and interference." Kane nodded and walked over to the communications station where Lieutenant Amy Park was working frantically to improve the signal quality. Park was young, but she had a gift for making sense of garbled transmissions that others could not understand. "What can you tell me, Lieutenant?" Kane said, as he leaned over her shoulder to look at the display. "Sir, I have managed to isolate a few words from the transmission," Park said with excitement in her voice. "The Villani are definitely in trouble, but I cannot make out exactly what kind of threat they are facing." She pressed a button and the bridge speakers crackled to life with static and broken fragments of alien speech. Kane could hear the fear in the Villani voice even though he could not understand their language. The universal translator was having trouble with the damaged signal, but it managed to pick out a few words like attack and no survivors and help us. Dr. Elena Vasquez came onto the bridge carrying her medical kit and looking concerned. As the fleet's chief medical officer, she had treated many different alien species and knew how to read their body language and emotional states. She had been studying the Villani for years and understood their culture better than most humans. "Admiral, I need to see that transmission," Vasquez said as she joined the group around the communications station. "The Villani are not the type to panic easily, so if they are sending a distress signal, then something very serious must be happening." Park played the cleaned-up version of the signal again, and Vasquez listened carefully to every word. Her face grew pale as she heard the fear and desperation in the alien voice. When the transmission ended, she turned to Kane with worry in her eyes. "Admiral, they are talking about systematic destruction of colonies along the outer rim," Vasquez said slowly. "According to this message, 12 different worlds have gone completely silent in the past month with no explanation for what happened to them." Kane felt a chill run down his spine as he processed this information. 12 colonies represented hundreds of thousands of lives, and if they had all been destroyed, then something very dangerous was operating in this sector of space. Commander Jake Morrison entered the bridge at that moment carrying his flight helmet. "I'm looking ready for action." Morrison was the youngest squadron leader in the fleet, but he had proven himself in several difficult missions, and Kane trusted him to handle whatever threats they might face. "Admiral, I heard we picked up a distress signal," Morrison said as he joined the group. "My pilots are ready to launch if you need us to investigate." Before Kane could respond, the communications board lit up with an incoming transmission. This one was much clearer than the previous signal and appeared to be coming from much closer to their current position. "Admiral, we have an incoming message from Ambassador Thera of the Villani Diplomatic Corps," Park announced as she worked to establish a clear connection. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the image of a tall bird-like alien with beautiful silver feathers and large, intelligent eyes. Thera was normally calm and composed, but now her feathers were disheveled and her eyes showed signs of extreme stress. "Admiral Kane, thank goodness we have reached you. Thera said in accented but clear English. "We desperately need the assistance of your fleet, as our people are facing a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered before." Kane stepped forward so Thyra could see him clearly on her end of the transmission. He had worked with the Villani ambassador before and knew she was not given to exaggeration or panic. "Ambassador, what exactly is happening out there?" Kane asked in his calmest voice. "We received fragments of a distress signal but could not make out all the details." Thyra's feathers ruffled with agitation as she began to explain the situation. "Unknown attackers have been hitting our colonies one by one over the past month. They strike without warning and leave no survivors behind. 12 worlds have gone completely dark and we have no idea who is responsible or why they are doing this." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward with questions of her own. "Ambassador, are there any patterns to these attacks? Do the attackers take anything from the colonies, or do they simply destroy everything?" "That is what makes this so terrifying, Doctor," Thyra replied with a shudder. "The attackers do not seem interested in our resources or technology. They simply appear to destroy everything living on the planet and then vanish without a trace. Our scout ships have found nothing but scorched earth and orbital debris." Kane exchanged glances with Torres, who was already pulling up star charts on her tactical display. The pattern of attacks seemed random at first, but Kane suspected there might be some logic to it that they were not seeing yet. "Ambassador, we will need coordinates for all the attacked colonies so we can investigate," Kane said. "In the meantime, I suggest you evacuate any vulnerable worlds and move your people to more defensible positions." Thera nodded gratefully, but then her expression grew even more worried. "Admiral, there is something else you need to know. The Federation Council has been debating this crisis for weeks, but they cannot agree on what action to take. The Aldari want to try diplomatic contact with the attackers while the Nexari think we should hide until the threat passes." Torres looked up from her display with frustration written on her face. "While they debate, more colonies are being destroyed and more people are dying." Before anyone could respond, the communications board started flashing with an urgent priority signal. Park quickly established the connection and another alien appeared on the screen. This one was clearly terrified and speaking so fast that the universal translator was struggling to keep up. "This is Sanctuary Station calling any Federation vessels in the area," the alien gasped. "We are under attack by unknown forces. They have breached our outer defenses and are moving through the station. We have 50,000 people here from dozens of different species. Please send help immediately." The transmission suddenly filled with the sound of weapons fire and screaming voices. Kane could hear explosions in the background and the terrified cries of beings fighting for their lives. Then the signal cut off completely, leaving only static on the view screen. Kane turned to his crew with determination burning in his eyes. The Federation Council could debate all they wanted, but he was not going to sit here while innocent people were being slaughtered. "Lieutenant Park, send a message to all ships in the fleet," Kane ordered. "Tell them to prep for immediate departure. We are going to Sanctuary Station." Torres looked at him with concern. "Admiral, we do not know what we are flying into. These attackers have destroyed 12 colonies without leaving any witnesses." Kane nodded grimly as he watched his crew spring into action around him. "Then I guess it is time someone survived long enough to see what we are really dealing with." The human Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Sanctuary Station, and Kane immediately knew something was terribly wrong. The massive research facility that normally blazed with lights and bustled with activity now drifted silently in space like a dead hulk. No navigation beacons flashed their welcome signals, and no traffic moved between the station and the small fleet of civilian ships that had been docked there. Chief Engineer Omar Hassan looked up from his instruments with a puzzled expression on his weathered face. Hassan had been keeping starships running for 20 years, and he had never seen anything quite like this before. "Admiral, the station appears to be completely intact," Hassan reported. "All the major systems are showing green on our scans, but there are no life signs anywhere on the station. It is like everyone just vanished into thin air." Lieutenant Colonel Beth Rodriguez entered the bridge wearing her full combat armor and carrying her assault rifle. Rodriguez commanded the Marine detachments on all the ships in the fleet, and she was not the type to back down from a fight, no matter how dangerous it might be. "Admiral, my Marines are ready to board the station and find out what happened to those people," Rodriguez said as she checked the charge on her weapon. "We have full environmental suits and enough firepower to handle whatever might be waiting for us in there." Kane studied the tactical display showing the station's layout and tried to figure out the best approach. Sanctuary Station was huge with multiple levels and thousands of rooms where anything could be hiding. If the attackers were still there, his Marines could be walking into a trap. "Colonel, take a full platoon and sweep the main levels," Kane ordered. "I want constant communication, and if you encounter any resistance, you pull back immediately. We need information more than we need." "Heroes right now." Rodriguez nodded and headed for the shuttle bay with her team while Kane continued studying the sensor readings. Something about this situation felt wrong beyond just the missing people. The attackers had left the station completely intact, which suggested they were not interested in destroying it. Commander Morrison appeared on the view screen from his fighter cockpit, ready to provide air support for the boarding party. Morrison was young, but he had good instincts, and Kane trusted him to spot trouble before it could threaten his Marines. "Admiral, the First have my squadron in position around the station," Morrison reported. "We are not detecting any other ships in the area, but there are some strange energy readings coming from the far side of the structure." Dr. Vasquez joined Kane at the tactical station, carrying her medical scanner and looking determined to help solve this mystery. As a xenobiologist, she understood many different alien species and might be able to piece together what had happened here. "Admiral, I want to go with the boarding party," Vasquez said. "If there are any survivors, they might need medical attention. And I can also analyze any biological evidence we find." Kane nodded his approval as Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system from inside the station. The Marines had made entry through the main docking bay and were working their way through the residential sections. "Admiral, this place is like a ghost ship," Rodriguez reported. "There are signs that people left in a hurry, but no indication of violence or struggle. Food is still sitting on tables in the mess halls, and personal belongings are scattered everywhere." Sergeant Tommy Walsh's voice joined the conversation from deeper in the station. Walsh was Rodriguez's most experienced Marine, and if anyone could find clues about what had happened, it would be him. "Colonel, I found the security office, and the surveillance system is still running," Walsh reported. "You need to see this footage from 12 hours ago." The main view screen switched to show the security camera feeds from throughout the station. Kane watched as the normal daily routine played out with aliens of dozens of different species going about their business. Then something changed, and people started looking up at the ceiling with expressions of confusion and fear. Tall, pale figures in advanced armor began moving through the corridors with disturbing coordination. They moved like a single organism, rather than individual beings, and they seemed to know exactly where they were going. The security cameras showed them herding groups of terrified aliens toward the cargo bays. Dr. Vasquez gasped as she watched the footage. "Admiral, those attackers are not killing anyone. They are taking them alive and loading them into some kind of transport ships." The security recording showed the mysterious figures working with mechanical efficiency to round up every living being on the station. They ignored all the technology and valuable research materials and focused entirely on capturing the people. Within a few hours, the station was empty and the attackers had vanished. Kane felt his blood run cold as he realized what they were dealing with. These were not raiders or conquerors looking for territory or resources. They were harvesters collecting living beings for some unknown purpose. Captain Torres called up star charts on her display and began plotting the positions of all the attacked colonies. After studying the data for several minutes, she turned to Kane with a grim expression. "Admiral, I think I have found the pattern," Torres said. "All the attacks are moving in a rough line toward the core systems. If they continue on this trajectory, their next target will probably be New Geneva." Kane's heart sank as he thought about New Geneva. It was humanity's largest colony outside the Earth system, with over 2 million people calling it home. If the attackers were moving toward civilized space, then millions of lives were at risk. Morrison's voice came over the communication system with new information from his reconnaissance flight. "Admiral, I have traced those energy readings to a debris field on the far side of the station. It looks like pieces of alien technology that do not match anything in our databases." Rodriguez's team had made their way to the main computer core and was downloading all the station's logs and records. They hoped to find some clue about where the attackers had come from, or where they might be heading next. Dr. Vasquez was analyzing biological samples from the station and making disturbing discoveries. "Admiral, I am finding traces of an unknown biotechnology throughout the facility. Whatever these attackers are using, it appears to be part machine and part living organism." Hassan looked up from his engineering station with worry in his eyes. "Admiral, I am picking up massive energy signatures moving toward this system. Something big is coming our way, and it will be here in less than 6 hours." Before Kane could respond, the communication board lit up with an incoming message. The signal was weak and heavily encrypted, but Lieutenant Park managed to establish a connection. A human face appeared on the screen, looking haggard and frightened. "This is Dr. Ravi Patel transmitting from inside the enemy fleet," the man whispered urgently. "I managed to hide when they took my research station 3 days ago. These things are not what they appear to be, and they have a weakness that nobody knows about." The transmission flickered and threatened to cut out as Dr. Patel continued his desperate message. "They are building something massive at the center of their fleet, something that requires enormous amounts of neural energy to power. You have to stop them before they complete it." Kane leaned forward with intense interest. If this scientist had found a weakness in the enemy, then there might still be hope of stopping them before they reached the core systems. "Doctor, what kind of weakness are you talking about?" Kane asked. "We need to know everything you have learned about these attackers." Patel's face showed fear and determination in equal measure as he prepared to share his discovery. "Admiral, they have never faced coordinated resistance from Deathworlders before. They do not understand how humans think, and that might be the key to defeating them." The transmission suddenly filled with alarms and the sound of approaching footsteps. Patel's eyes went wide with terror as he realized he had been discovered. "They are coming for me," Patel whispered. "Admiral, you have to get to New Geneva before they do. Warn them that the harvesters are coming and that Earth itself might be their final target." The signal cut off, leaving Kane staring at a blank screen and wondering if Dr. Patel was still alive. But the scientist's message had given them crucial information about the enemy's capabilities and intentions. Kane turned to his crew with determination burning in his eyes. The enemy might be powerful and mysterious, but they had made one critical mistake. They had attacked humanity's colonies, and that was something no human would ever forgive or forget. Dr. Ravi Patel crouched in the maintenance shaft of the alien harvester ship, listening to the mechanical sounds of the vessel around him. He had been hiding in the cramped space for 3 days now, surviving on emergency rations and trying to understand the technology that surrounded him. The ship was like nothing he had ever seen before, with walls that seemed to pulse with organic life and corridors that shifted their configuration. When nobody was watching, Admiral Kane paced the bridge of the Vengeance, studying the tactical display that showed the approaching enemy fleet. The harvesters numbered in the hundreds, and their ships were massive beyond anything humanity had ever built. Each vessel appeared to be part machine and part living organism with biotechnology that defied human understanding. Captain Alex Cross sat in the cramped bridge of the UES Shadow, preparing for the most dangerous mission of his career. The Shadow was humanity's most advanced stealth ship, capable of remaining invisible to most sensor systems. Cross had volunteered to take his ship deep into enemy territory to rescue Dr. Patel and gather intelligence about the harvester fleet. Major Diana Foster checked her equipment one final time as her Special Forces team prepared for deployment. Foster had led dozens of covert operations during her career, but nothing had prepared her For infiltrating alien ships filled with hostile biotechnology? Her team carried experimental weapons designed to disrupt organic computer systems. Commander Ryan Bell worked frantically at his communication station, trying to maintain contact with Dr. Patel. The signal was weak and constantly threatened to cut out, but Bell was determined to keep the connection alive. Dr. Patel's intelligence was their only hope of understanding the enemy. Admiral, I am receiving another transmission from Dr. Patel, Bell announced. The signal is very weak, but I think he has discovered something important about how these ships operate. Kane moved to the communication station as Dr. Patel's voice crackled through the speakers. The scientist sounded exhausted and frightened, but his words were clear and urgent. Admiral, I have been studying the ship's systems, and I think I understand how they work, Patel whispered. These vessels operate through a collective consciousness that links all the individual units together. They share thoughts and memories, like a hive mind. Dr. Vasquez joined Kane at the communication station with interest. As a xenobiologist, she was fascinated by the concept of a collective consciousness, but she also understood the tactical implications. Doctor, are you saying these attackers do not think as individuals? Vasquez asked. If that is true, then they might be vulnerable to tactics that disrupt their group coordination? Patel's voice grew more excited as he explained his discovery. Exactly, Doctor. I have been watching them operate, and they become confused and disoriented when their network connection is interrupted. They are like computer programs that cannot function without constant communication. Kane felt a spark of hope as he realized what this meant. If the harvesters depended on group consciousness, then human tactics based on individual initiative and creative thinking might be effective against them. Captain Cross's voice came over the communication system from the shadow. Admiral, we are approaching the outer edge of the enemy fleet. I count over 300 harvester ships arranged in a perfect formation. They are definitely not thinking like individuals. Major Foster's team was already in their insertion pods ready to launch. As soon as the shadow reached Dr. Patel's location, each pod was equipped with stealth technology and enough firepower to fight their way out of a heavily defended ship. Admiral, I have a visual on the target vessel, Cross reported. It is massive and appears to be some kind of command ship. Doctor, Patel's signal is coming from the lower sections near what looks like prison cells. Kane studied the tactical display showing the harvester fleet's formation. The ships were arranged with mathematical precision that suggested they were following a predetermined pattern rather than adapting to changing conditions. Commander Morrison's fighter squadron was standing by to provide cover for the rescue mission. Morrison had been studying the enemy ships and noticed that they seemed to have difficulty tracking fast-moving targets that changed course unpredictably. Dr. Patel's voice came through the speakers again with new urgency. Admiral, you need to move quickly. I have discovered what they are building at the center of their fleet, and it is worse than I thought. They call it a neural storm generator. Kane felt his blood run cold at the implications. Doctor, what does this neural storm do? It amplifies their collective consciousness to planetary scale, Patel replied with fear in his voice. Once they activate it, they will be able to harvest the neural energy of entire star systems simultaneously. They are planning to use it on Earth. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this terrible news. If the harvesters could drain the neural energy of entire planets, then nowhere in human space would be safe from their attacks. Captain Cross guided the shadow through the enemy formation using every stealth technique he knew. The harvester ship seemed to ignore his vessel completely, as if they could not conceive of anything penetrating their perfect formation. Major Foster launched her insertion pods toward the target ship and immediately encountered resistance. The ship's biotechnology detected the incoming pods and began trying to intercept them with organic weapons that moved like living tentacles. Admiral, the ship is fighting back, Foster reported as her pod dodged through the defensive fire. These weapons are definitely alive, and they are learning our tactics as we use them. Dr. Vasquez monitored the mission from the Vengeance and noticed something important about the harvester ship's defenses. Major, the ship's weapons are reacting too slowly to your movements. Try using random evasive patterns instead of standard military tactics. Foster followed the advice and immediately noticed the difference. When her team used unpredictable movements, the ship's defenses seemed unable to track them effectively. The biotechnology was programmed to counter logical tactical patterns, but it could not handle truly random behavior. The insertion pods breached the harvester ship's hull, and Foster's team found themselves in corridors that seemed to pulse with alien life. The walls were covered with organic circuits that glowed with strange lights, and the air was filled with the sound of alien machinery. "This place is like being inside a living organism," Foster reported as her team moved deeper into the ship. "The corridors keep changing shape, and the walls appear to be watching us." Dr. Patel guided them through the shifting maze toward his hiding place in the maintenance shafts. Along the way, they passed holding cells filled with captured beings from dozens of different species, all being slowly drained of their neural energy. "Admiral, we have found the prisoners," Foster announced. "There are thousands of them from all the colonies that were attacked. They are still alive, but they appear to be in some kind of induced coma." Kane made a command decision that would change everything. "Major, rescue as many as you can, but your primary mission is to get Dr. Patel out of there. We need his intelligence more than anything else." Foster's team fought their way through the organic corridors while the ship's defenses tried to stop them. The biotechnology seemed to learn from each encounter, but human unpredictability kept it confused and unable to mount an effective counterattack. Dr. Patel emerged from his hiding place carrying a data storage device filled with information about the harvester technology. His face was pale and drawn from 3 days of hiding, but his eyes burned with determination. "Major, I have everything we need to understand their network," Patel said as Foster's team surrounded him. "But we need to move fast because they are about to activate the neural storm generator." The rescue team fought their way back to the extraction point with hundreds of freed prisoners following behind them. The harvester ship's defenses were becoming more aggressive, but they still could not adapt to human tactical unpredictability. "Captain." Cross brought the Shadow alongside the harvester ship just as alarms began sounding throughout the enemy fleet. The collective consciousness had finally realized what was happening and was mobilizing to stop the rescue mission. "Admiral, the entire fleet is powering up their weapons," Cross reported. "We need to get out of here before they coordinate their response." Foster's team and the rescued prisoners made it aboard the Shadow just as the harvester ships began firing at them. Cross pushed his engines to maximum power and dove toward the outer edge of the enemy formation. The harvester ships pursued them with mathematical precision, but they could not predict Cross's random evasive maneuvers. The Shadow escaped into hyperspace carrying crucial intelligence about the enemy's capabilities and weaknesses. Back on the Vengeance, Dr. Patel worked with Dr. Vasquez to analyze the data he had stolen from the harvester ship. What they discovered was both terrifying and hopeful. "Admiral, the neural storm generator is almost complete," Patel reported. "But I found something else in their data files. The collective consciousness has a critical weakness that we can exploit." Kane leaned forward with intense interest. "What kind of weakness, Doctor?" Patel smiled grimly as he pulled up the data on his display. "Admiral, they have never encountered a species like humanity before. Our chaotic individualistic thinking creates interference in their network. If we can get enough humans thinking unpredictably in the same area, we might be able to overload their entire system." Kane felt hope rising in his chest as he realized what this meant. Humanity's greatest weakness might actually be their greatest strength against an enemy that thought as one mind. But before he could celebrate, Lieutenant Park's voice cut through his thoughts with terrible news. "Admiral, I am detecting massive energy signatures moving toward the Sol system. The harvester fleet is heading directly for Earth." General Patricia Hayes stood in the command center of Earth Defense headquarters watching the tactical displays that showed the approaching harvester fleet. The enemy ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system and were moving toward Earth with terrifying purpose. Hayes had spent 30 years defending humanity's homeworld, but she had never faced a threat quite like this one. Captain Michael Torres commanded the orbital defense platforms that ringed Earth like a protective shell. Torres was Lisa's older brother, and he shared her tactical brilliance along with a stubborn determination to protect their home planet. His platforms carried the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built, but he knew they would not be enough against the Harvester fleet. Lieutenant Amy Park worked frantically at her communication station, trying to coordinate the defense of Earth with Admiral Kane's fleet. The Admiral was still days away from reaching the Sol system, and Earth would have to hold out on its own until reinforcements could arrive. Admiral David Chun was racing toward Earth with every available ship from the core worlds, but his fleet was scattered across dozens of star systems. Chun was pushing his ships beyond their design limits, but he knew he might not arrive in time to help defend humanity's homeworld. The Harvester fleet entered the outer system and immediately began deploying their biotechnology. Massive organic structures unfolded from their ships and started anchoring themselves to asteroids and small moons. Dr. Vasquez had warned that these were neural harvesting stations designed to drain the life force from entire planets. Captain Torres opened fire with his orbital platforms as soon as the enemy ships came within range. The human weapons struck the Harvester vessels with devastating force, but the alien biotechnology seemed to absorb the damage and repair itself almost instantly. General, the enemy ships are not responding to our weapons fire, Torres reported with frustration in his voice. Our plasma cannons are having some effect, but they repair the damage faster than we can cause it. Hayes studied the tactical display and realized that humanity was facing an enemy that fought by completely different rules. The Harvesters did not seem to care about casualties or ship losses because their biotechnology could regenerate from almost any damage down on Earth's surface. Millions of people were evacuating from the major cities as government officials tried to organize some kind of defense. But many humans refused to run and instead prepared to fight the invaders with whatever weapons they could find. Sergeant First Class Tony Martinez was leading a group of volunteers in New York City as they set up defensive positions throughout the urban landscape. Martinez had fought in 3 different wars, but he had never expected to be defending Earth itself from alien invaders. "Listen up, people," Martinez shouted to the civilians who had volunteered to fight. "These things might have better technology than us, but they have never faced humans who are fighting for their homes and families." Dr. James Kim worked in his laboratory, trying to understand the Harvester technology that Dr. Patel had brought back from the enemy fleet. Kim was a theoretical physicist who specialized in exotic energy systems, and he was convinced there had to be a way to disrupt the alien network. Commander Sarah Williams coordinated the global defense effort from her position in Geneva. Williams had spent her career planning for alien invasion scenarios, but the reality was far worse than anything she had imagined in her worst nightmares. The Harvester ships began deploying smaller vessels that moved toward Earth's surface like metallic raindrops. Each one carried biotechnology designed to tap directly into the neural networks of living beings and drain their consciousness. Captain Torres fought desperately to stop the invasion craft, but there were simply too many of them. His orbital platforms destroyed dozens of the smaller ships, but hundreds more continued toward the planet's surface. Admiral Kane's voice crackled through the communication system from the approaching Third Fleet. "General, we are still 18 hours out, but we have analyzed the enemy formation and found a possible weakness." Hayes felt a spark of hope as she listened to Kane's report. "Admiral, we need any advantage we can get. These things are not responding to conventional weapons, and they seem to be targeting population centers." Kane's tactical analysis appeared on the main display, showing the Harvester fleet's formation. "General, they are maintaining perfect coordination across their entire fleet, which suggests they are still operating as a collective consciousness. Dr. Patel believes we can disrupt their network if we can create enough neural chaos." Dr. Kim looked up from his calculations with excitement in his eyes. "General, if Admiral Kane is correct, then we might be able to turn Earth's entire population into a weapon against the Harvesters." Hayes stared at the physicist in confusion. Doctor, what exactly are you suggesting? Kim pulled up his research. On the main display showing brainwave patterns and neural activity measurements. General human consciousness is naturally chaotic and unpredictable. If we could coordinate every person on Earth to think random thoughts simultaneously, we might overload the Harvester network. The first invasion craft landed in major cities around the world and immediately began deploying their biotechnology. Organic tentacles emerged from the ships and started connecting to power grids and communication networks as if the technology was trying to tap into human civilization itself. Sergeant Martinez and his volunteers engaged the invaders in the streets of New York, but their conventional weapons seemed to have little effect on the alien biotechnology. The Harvester soldiers moved with mechanical precision and showed no response to pain or injury. These things do not fight like any enemy I have ever faced, Martinez reported as his team fell back to a prepared defensive position. They ignore cover and tactical positioning and just keep advancing no matter how much damage we cause. Captain Torres watched in horror as more Harvester ships entered Earth's atmosphere and began establishing neural harvesting stations around major population centers. The alien technology was spreading across the planet like a virus, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. Dr. Vasquez's voice came over the communication system from Admiral Kane's fleet with crucial information. General, we have been analyzing the Harvester biotechnology and we think we understand how it works. The aliens are trying to create a planet-wide neural network that will allow them to harvest human consciousness directly. Hayes felt her blood run cold as she realized what this meant. The Harvesters were not just trying to conquer Earth, they were planning to drain the minds of every human on the planet. Admiral Chun's reinforcement fleet finally arrived at the edge of the Sol system, but they were still hours away from reaching Earth. Chun could see the Harvester ships spreading across the planet like a plague and knew that conventional tactics would not be enough to stop them. Dr. Kim finished his calculations and turned to General Hayes with a desperate plan. General, we need to coordinate every human on Earth to think chaotic thoughts at exactly the same moment. If we can create enough neural interference, we might be able to disrupt the Harvester network. Hayes stared at the physicist as if he had lost his mind. Doctor, how exactly do you propose we coordinate 7 billion people to think random thoughts simultaneously? We use every communication system on the planet, Kim replied. Television, radio, internet, emergency broadcast systems, everything. We tell people to think about their most random memories all at the same time. Commander Williams worked frantically to establish communication with resistance groups around the world. The Harvester biotechnology was interfering with most electronic systems, but some hardened military networks were still functioning. Admiral Kane's fleet finally entered the Sol system and immediately engaged the Harvester ships with everything they had. The human weapons were more effective when used in coordination, but the enemy still seemed to absorb damage faster than they could cause it. Admiral, the enemy is beginning to activate their neural storm generator, Dr. Patel reported from his position. On the Vengeance. We have maybe 30 minutes before they drain the consciousness of everyone on Earth. Kane made the hardest decision of his career. All ships focus fire on the central Harvester vessel. We are going to ram that thing if we have to. General Hayes activated the global emergency broadcast system and began transmitting Dr. Kim's desperate plan to every human on Earth. Her voice reached billions of people as she explained what they needed to do to save their world. Citizens of Earth, this is General Hayes with emergency instructions. We need every person on the planet to think their most chaotic random thoughts for the next 10 minutes. Think about childhood memories, favorite foods, crazy dreams, anything unpredictable. The fate of humanity depends on the chaos in your minds. Around the world, humans began following the instructions despite not understanding how it could possibly help. They thought about birthday parties and summer vacations and silly jokes and embarrassing moments all at the same time. The effect on the Harvester network was immediate and devastating. The alien biotechnology had never encountered anything like 7 billion minds, all thinking completely different chaotic thoughts simultaneously. Their collective consciousness began to fracture under the neural interference. Admiral Kane watched in amazement as the harvester ships began losing coordination and firing at each other instead of human targets. "General, whatever you are doing down there, keep it up. The enemy formation is falling apart." But even as victory seemed possible, the central harvester ship began to glow with an ominous light. Something ancient and terrible was awakening inside the alien vessel, and it was far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The central harvester ship began to crack open like a massive egg as something ancient and terrible emerged from within. Admiral Kane watched in horror as a being of pure psychic energy unfolded itself in the space above. Earth, the entity was vast beyond comprehension, with tendrils of consciousness that reached across the entire solar system. Captain Elena Reyes had just arrived with emergency reinforcements from the Jupiter colonies, but her small fleet seemed insignificant compared to the cosmic horror that was awakening above Earth. Reyes was a veteran commander, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for facing a creature that existed primarily as living thought. Dr. James Kim stared at his instruments in disbelief as readings spiked beyond anything his equipment could measure. The entity was broadcasting psychic energy on frequencies that human science barely understood, and the effect on nearby ships was immediate and terrifying. "General, this thing is not just another alien," Kim reported with fear in his voice. "It is something far older and more dangerous than anything we have encountered before. It appears to feed on consciousness itself." Sergeant First Class Tony Martinez felt the creature's presence pressing against his mind like a physical weight. All around him, civilians and soldiers alike were collapsing as the entity began draining their thoughts and memories. Martinez had faced death many times, but he had never experienced terror quite like this. The ancient being spoke directly into the minds of every human in the solar system, with a voice like thunder and ice. Its thoughts were filled with hunger and contempt as it regarded humanity as nothing more than an interesting appetizer before the main course. "I am the devourer of worlds," the entity announced with cosmic arrogance. "I have consumed the consciousness of 1,000 civilizations across the galaxy, and your species will be no different. Your chaotic thoughts amuse me, but they cannot save you from your fate." Admiral Kane felt the creature's psychic pressure trying to crush his mind, but his years of military discipline helped him maintain some resistance. Around him, his crew members were struggling to stay conscious as the entity began sampling their thoughts and memories. Commander Sarah Williams coordinated the global defense effort even as she felt her own mind being invaded by alien thoughts. The creature was learning about human civilization by reading their minds directly, and it seemed particularly interested in their capacity for violence and creativity. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked desperately to understand the entity's nature while fighting off its psychic assault. As a xenobiologist, she had studied many different forms of alien life, but this creature seemed to exist on a completely different level of reality. "Admiral, this entity is not from our universe," Vasquez reported through gritted teeth. "It is one of the first one's cosmic predators that exist between dimensions. It uses harvester races like the Collective to gather food from different galaxies." The Devourer began extending its psychic tendrils toward Earth's major population centers, preparing to drain the consciousness of 7 billion humans simultaneously. But as it touched human minds, it encountered something unexpected that caused it to recoil in confusion. Human thoughts were not like the ordered consciousness it had consumed from other species. Instead of neat logical patterns, the entity found chaos, emotion, irrationality, and billions of completely unique perspectives all existing simultaneously. Captain Michael Torres felt the alien presence in his mind, but instead of surrendering to fear, he began thinking about his sister, Lisa, and all the times she had beaten him at chess when they were children. His random memories created static in the entity's psychic network. Around the world, humans instinctively began fighting back against the mental invasion by thinking the most chaotic thoughts they could manage. They remembered embarrassing moments from school, terrible jokes their grandmother used to tell, and the taste of their favorite ice cream all at the same time. Admiral Kane realized what was happening and immediately opened a communication channel to every human in the solar system. "All ships, all personnel, everyone listen to me. This thing feeds on ordered consciousness, but human thoughts are naturally chaotic. Think about everything that makes you human and think about it all at once. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 7 billion humans began flooding their minds with memories, emotions, dreams, fears, hopes, and random thoughts. The psychic noise created by their chaotic consciousness was unlike anything the Devourer had ever encountered. Admiral David Chun led his reinforcement fleet in a desperate attack on the entity, but conventional weapons seemed to pass right through its psychic form. Chun realized that this was not a battle that could be won with plasma cannons and missile batteries. Dr. Kim made a crucial discovery as he monitored the psychic readings from across the planet. General, the entity is becoming confused and disoriented. Human consciousness is like poison to something that feeds on ordered thoughts. The Devourer tried to focus its attention on individual human minds but found itself overwhelmed by the sheer chaos of human thinking. Every time it attempted to drain someone's consciousness, it encountered a storm of random memories and illogical emotions. Commander Jake Morrison led his fighter squadron in desperate attacks against the harvester ships that were still trying to establish neural harvesting stations on Earth's surface. Morrison found that the alien biotechnology was becoming less coordinated as the entity struggled to maintain control. Admiral, the harvester ships are losing coordination, Morrison reported. Whatever we are doing to that cosmic horror, it is affecting their entire network. General Patricia Hayes felt the alien presence trying to drain her mind, but she fought back by thinking about her daughter's wedding day and her first dog and the worst movie she had ever seen all at the same time. Her chaotic thoughts created interference that spread to other humans nearby. The Devourer became increasingly frustrated as it realized that human consciousness was fundamentally different from anything it had encountered in millions of years of feeding. Instead of the orderly thoughts it expected, it found beautiful, terrible chaos that hurt to consume. Admiral Kane made a desperate decision that would determine the fate of humanity. He opened his mind completely to the entity's psychic assault, but instead of trying to resist, he flooded his thoughts with every chaotic human experience he could remember. Kane thought about his first day at the Naval Academy, and his wedding day, and the birth of his children, and the taste of coffee, and the sound of rain, and the feeling of sand between his toes all at the same exact moment. The psychic overload was more than the Devourer could handle. It had evolved to consume orderly consciousness from species that thought in logical patterns, but human chaos was like trying to digest pure noise. Around the world, other humans followed Kane's example and opened their minds to share their most chaotic thoughts with the entity. 7 billion minds thinking 7 billion different things simultaneously created a psychic storm that shattered the Devourer's consciousness. The ancient entity began to break apart as human chaos overwhelmed its ability to maintain coherent thought. For the first time in its cosmic existence, it experienced fear, confusion, and the terrible realization that it had encountered something it could not consume. "This is impossible," the Devourer screamed into the minds of every human. "I have devoured galaxies and consumed the thoughts of entire civilizations. Your primitive species cannot defeat me." But humanity's answer was not words but pure chaotic consciousness. They thought about love and hate and joy and sorrow and silly songs and childhood, fears and favorite foods and embarrassing moments all at once. The psychic storm created by 7 billion chaotic human minds tore the Devourer apart piece by piece. The entity that had consumed countless civilizations finally met something it could not digest. Beautiful, terrible, wonderful human chaos, As the Devourer died, its psychic scream echoed across the galaxy, warning other cosmic predators that Earth was defended by something far more dangerous than advanced weapons. The planet was protected by minds that thought in ways that defied all logic and reason. The harvester ships that had survived the battle began shutting down as their biotechnology lost connection to the collective consciousness. Some of the alien drones actually began developing individual personalities as they were freed from the hive mind. Admiral Kane collapsed on the bridge of his ship, exhausted from the psychic battle, but alive and victorious. Around him, his crew members were slowly recovering from their ordeal and beginning to comprehend what they had accomplished. General Hayes received reports from around the world that the harvester invasion had been completely defeated. The alien. Biotechnology was shutting down everywhere, and the neural harvesting stations were going dark one by one. Dr. Vasquez studied the remains of the devourer with amazement. "Admiral, we have defeated something that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years. The galaxy is safe from cosmic predators for the first time in eons. Earth had become something new in the universe, a world protected not by advanced technology or military might, but by the beautiful chaos of human consciousness." The galaxy would never be quite the same again. Kane stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking down at the blue marble of Earth, and smiled. Humanity had always been told that their chaotic, individualistic nature was a weakness, but today it had proven to be their greatest strength. Lieutenant Park approached the Admiral with a communication pad in her hands. "Sir, we are receiving distress signals from the Andromeda Galaxy. It appears that other cosmic predators are still active out there, and they are requesting assistance." Kane took the pad and read the message. His smile widened as he realized that humanity had found its true purpose in the universe. They were not just another species struggling to survive, they were the galaxy's guardians against horrors that existed beyond normal understanding. "Lieutenant, send a message to all human fleets," Kane ordered. "Tell them to prepare for deployment to Andromeda. It looks like the Deathworlders have more work to do."